Thank you for the daily words, what a reminder. And thank you all for your expressions of support and understanding, and sometimes not so much. As we go through this time of transition, it's time, it's due. Jennifer and I and some of the other board members have been sort of dancing with it for a while to get to the point where we felt comfortable taking the next step, sharing the next step. And there'll be plenty of time, I hope, for you to ask any questions or you may have about what's going on. And I know, beyond any doubt, look at the good news that has come in today with the paying off of the debt. You're moving upward in a very exciting direction, and I am proud to continue to be a part of it. And even after I stop speaking on Sundays, I will never feel less than a part of this amazing community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These principles are really what I think are the secret, one of the major secrets to your success. Because it isn't every Unity Church that does this. It isn't every Unity Church, it isn't even most of them, I would think. But the idea of affirming these principles together each week really is a source of incredible strength. Don't you think that's true?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it is. And today I want to consider the universal truth from a somewhat more historical perspective. And this came about because I fortuitously learned that today would have been the 218th, I think, birthday of the founder of, certainly of New Thought in New England, P.P. Quimby. So I want to talk a little bit about what Unity's background is and why these principles are so important. All the tools that we explore together, and over the time I've been here, we've explored a number of things, haven't we? 12 Steps, Course in Miracles, Unity Basics, the Bible, of course. They're more alike than they are different, which means they can all be used interchangeably as we can consciously proceed on our spiritual journey. We don't have to choose the Unity principles and forego the Course in Miracles. We can recognize the common beliefs, the common truth, the common spiritual truth that we can find in both of them and in others as well. They're all rooted in a shared understanding of who we are and why we're here. And more it becomes clear to me that pretty much all of our principles and all of our community is based on one extraordinary statement. It's a cliche, but cliches become cliches because they are true and they work and people find them useful. The cliche is we are not human beings trying to have a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings working on having a human experience. It is amazing what a difference that makes. We are not trying to be something we're not. We're trying to be who we are as best we can. And that is a profound truth. In fact, let's affirm this together aloud. We are spiritual beings having a human experience together.
We are spiritual beings having a human experience together.
Good. We are always one with the presence and power of God. God is not elsewhere or absent to be sought or to be awaited. We are not waiting for something to happen. We are learning to be the something ourselves. We are going to make something happen. Our tools are all based in an understanding of our creative purpose. We aren't here simply to obey a distant authority and wait with patience and longing for the end time that will escort us into a new dimension of experience. It's an indication to me as I look at that, that without even thinking about it, I capitalized end and time. Because that is how we've always been taught, isn't it? There is an end time coming, and be prepared, or get prepared, because you never know. We are here to be the creative power of God in expression. And we can't be something we don't understand, and we can't consciously create until we understand how the presence and power express as us, how every choice we make is a conscious exercise of that creative power that we are. We can ignore it, we can doubt it, we can deny it, but it's true. And its truth doesn't change according to whether we're in the mood or not, according to whether we're making choices that seem positive or seem negative or seem fear-based or love-based. It's all a part of our creative purpose and our creative work. It doesn't mean that we're here to make positive, loving choices all the time. There would be no need for that. We are here to learn through the choices we make. We are here to allow every choice to be the creative power it is, so that then we can begin more consciously and carefully to choose what it is we are creating. This emphasis on a personal creative unity with the presence and power of God that carries us beyond the limits of blind obedience to the laws of the past is the essence of what has become known in the Christian world as New Thought. It isn't new. It's what the Apostle Paul called the secret hidden for generations. It's a universal understanding that long predates the ministry of Jesus. It's the spiritual truth Jesus taught and demonstrated throughout his ministry. It has been a deep and mystical current in the river of Christianity, even though many Christians deny its power, and many of the mystics who embraced it have been severely punished or put to death. This is particularly true in, well, pretty much everywhere where a previous belief was deeply established. Europe with traditional Christianity, the Far East with Buddhism and Hinduism in particular. It began to express more openly here in this new world, a new nation which attracted misfits of all sorts, including those who could not live comfortably within the stultifying boundaries of traditional Christian society. That is why New Thought has found its deepest roots in this country, because this country was populated by people who weren't satisfied with the truth they were being taught and told to experience in their previous lives. Although it is little discussed, the truth is that our founding fathers were not well-behaved religious conservatives. They were religious radicals, spiritual rebels who intended to base this new society on a new understanding of personal empowerment and spiritual possibility. I don't know, I think it was here recently, I don't know if any of you had a chance to see Hamilton. But to me, the remarkable thing about the unbelievable success of that musical is that this is precisely what it's about. These founding fathers are angry, they're excited, they're alive, they're on fire with new potential. They are not old founding fathers trying to maintain the status quo, just the opposite. The energy that came to express as unity in the late 19th century has been taking root from the earliest days of exploration. There was nothing brand new about unity, but it found a great resonance also not only in the dissatisfaction of the people coming over, but also it found a great resonance in the indigenous spirituality of the peoples of the land. And that's something that maybe isn't as well noted as it could be. Unity is very tied to Native American belief. Charles Fillmore, Myrtle Fillmore, so many of the New Thought pioneers were, in one way or another, involved with Native spirituality as a part of their ongoing path. The father of New Thought was a man of Belfast, Maine, named P.P. Quimby. And as I said, he was born February 4th, so happy birthday to all of you P.P. Quimby fans here. He was fascinated by the interplay of science and spirituality. The similarity in stories is really kind of remarkable. Charles Fillmore was born in the Midwest, in Minnesota. His experience of Native American spirituality began with when he seriously injured himself ice skating, and spent the rest of his life with a very serious limp until late on in his life when he was not so noticeably limping anymore. P.P. Quimby had, of all things, dental problems, which the traditional treatment of the time simply made worse. And he heard about a man named Mesmer, who was in Europe at the time, who was working with the interrelationship of mind and matter. And Quimby began working with that on his own. And over a great deal of time, not overnight, healed himself of his dental issues. But what led that to be possible was that he continually explored and experimented and studied. He visited Mesmer. He had his own pupils here. And he eventually began quite a school in Maine, in Belfast, Maine. Trained as a mesmerist, a hypnotist basically, and experienced firsthand the power of thought and how belief could create reality. Eventually he began approaching the teachings of Jesus with the same curiosity and came to believe that Jesus was not claiming and demonstrating powers unique to him, but was calling each of us to discover, embrace, and express the power in ourselves. He healed and taught, as I said, from his home in Maine. One of his best-known students became known as Mary Baker Eddy. Mm-hmm. That was not her. She married several times, so I'm not sure which name is which, but she shaped the core of his teachings into a movement she called Christian Science. She hired as her magazine editor Emma Curtis Hopkins, who later broke with Mrs. Eddy over her control issues and over the basic question of the presence of God. Mary Baker Eddy felt possessive of her teachings. She felt that she alone had the power to speak on behalf of God, if you will. And Emma Curtis Hopkins felt that following the teachings of Quimby, this was common to everyone. This was a potential that existed within everyone. And so the purpose was not to impress people or tell them what to do. It was to encourage them and empower them to find the power within themselves. Mrs. Eddy was not a fan of that belief, and so she fired Emma Curtis Hopkins, who moved to Chicago and started a school there in the Auditorium Theater, a school of metaphysics. And she became known as the teacher of teachers. She taught Nora Brooks and Linda Kramer, who together founded Divine Science. She taught Ernest Holmes, who founded Religious Science. And she taught Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. So unity is thus as much a philosophy as a theology, based in clear principles that form a mindset from which we approach all of life. God is absolute good everywhere present. Human beings are creative expressions of God and therefore innately good. We create our manifest experiences in the realm of thought. Those three principles alone form the basis of not just of unity, but of new thought in general. Unity itself differs from other new thought in that we are much more Bible-based than others are, and much more Jesus-based. When I had the ministry in Oregon, I was constantly, because there are a lot of religious science and science of mind churches still out there, and I would get calls from ministers saying, what does this mean in the Bible? Or where is this? Is this really in the Bible? Somebody just told me it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. Because their training did not involve Bible. So they would turn to me for some guidance on where to look to find what they need. Unity's function as a tool for the journey, then, is more than a process to move us through specific challenges. It is that. And many people, I'm guessing, and I know in many cases, that many of you found your way to unity because you were having issues, because you were facing challenges. You needed some guidance, something didn't feel right, something felt inadequate, and you found your way here because of specific challenges that your life was putting up before you. But unity is much more than that. It's a framework within which every part of the journey can be seen and understood from an amazing new perspective. We bring this new perspective to our problems and to our life in general, both rigorously, that's the Charles Fillmore part of us, and lovingly. Myrtle Fillmore was the embodiment of love through her work with silent unity. And we move forward with an awareness that more is unfolding than might appear to the sensory mind. There's always more going on. There is never a problem that solves itself, or the solution to which is innate. There's always a door that opens, a pathway that creates new possibilities, new understanding. So we may apply these principles to a specific challenge in our lives, only to find that that challenge has opened doors to new possibilities, and there was much more going on at the time than we had any idea. Have you had that experience? Yeah. I thought I knew what was going on. I thought I knew I had to solve this problem. Instead, I learned that there's a whole new realm of possibility to explore. So, the basic principles are not just principles that we learn and apply. They are a part of the history of who we are as a theology, as a philosophy. It's not surprising, I think, that New England has such a relatively high standing in terms of the involvement of new thought, because it takes the energies that came here from Europe and applies them in powerful new ways, as transcendentalism, as Christian Science, as P.P. Quimby's work, which never really had a name of its own, that I'm aware of anyway. So I hope that's something to think about, something to be aware of. We are not just using religious beliefs to solve human problems. That misses the point in many ways. We are using a theology, an understanding of life, of ourselves, of each other, of our relationships among each other, in order to create the new reality that Jesus describes as the kingdom of heaven. Not something that is going to happen down the road or around the corner or someday if we're good enough to deserve it. But the kingdom of heaven is the truth of who we are. And we apply these principles to bring that creation into expression. And in doing that, we are not only helping ourselves and each other as members of this community, for example, but we're contributing to the collective consciousness of the world, contributing in huge, huge ways. We don't always realize, it's kind of like the gifts and tithing. We don't stop to realize how much we're giving, how much we're tithing, how much of an impact that is having, until we have an opportunity to do that, whether it's the first of the year or whenever seems appropriate. But it's not just that we're giving to keep the lights on, although it's nice that they are, and to keep the musicians coming, although it's more than nice that they are. It's that we are creating the kingdom. We come here on Sunday morning, and together we create the kingdom. And you can tell that when you share the energy here. You can tell it during the services, during the meditations, during the food. We are creating the kingdom. Any thoughts, any questions? Yes?
How do you spell Pippi Quimby? I just tried to look him up.
It's P period, P period.
Oh, Pippi.
His last name is Quimby, Q-U-I-M-B-Y.
Well, I know that's a main name, so
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah, I don't know what the initials stand for. He's just always known as Pippi Quimby. Yeah.
When you say, you were talking about how we're not like waiting for God to the second coming or something like that. It's for us to make something happen. But how do you distinguish between like letting something happen and making something happen? Could you explain that?
Well, I think it's a question of your own internal, what you think you're doing. I'm certainly not going to stand here and say that praying to a God in the distance doesn't work, because it was one of my teachers used to say it doesn't work except when it does. But when it's working, it's because I'm not asking for something to come from beyond. I am affirming something that I'm feeling within me, and allowing that to express through me and become that experience or that solution, that answer that I'm looking for. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for this great talk today. I'm so glad that Bob's recording it, because I feel like it's the clearest delineation of the lineage that I've ever heard. That was just so beautifully expressed, and what you said before that too about us as creative beings is wonderful. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. I'm delighted. I have always had a passion for the history of unity, and the lineage, because you know my passion for Bible, but I've always found that they're not two different things. Unity emerges from everything that the Bible is about, everything that the teachings of Jesus are about. And the more we recognize that, the more we recognize the line that connects it all, the stronger we become, and the clearer we become in exactly what it is we're doing, and exactly why it is that this feels so right and so good. That we have the sense that we're about our Father's business, as Jesus would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think the Bible's full of this idea of you have the power within you. Jesus, of course, was always saying that you can do things that everybody can do this, or you can do greater things than me, or whatever. And whenever he healed anybody, he was like, he was encouraging them to get in touch with that potential that you talked about with Emma.
Sure, that is absolutely true. It's also true that we can misunderstand what he said, and we can give all the power to him. Jesus, that was what the early church began with, and that is what traditional Christianity is more concerned with, is giving power to Jesus, recognizing the power in Jesus. But the Fillmores, among others, certainly P.P. Quimby being one of them, recognized something very different. They recognized that the Bible was giving us examples to follow, not rules to obey. And working that way begins to make all the difference.
And I've even seen that idea in the Old Testament, though, too. The idea of you have this, it's in you. And she wrote a book, too, right? Lessons, is that Lessons in Truth? Is her book?
No, Lessons in Truth is not her book. Curtis Hopkins, I'll never remember the title now.
Oh, okay.
But she did write
that Unity public, it's a Unity book, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it still is. It has been.
Teaching.
Yeah. She was Emma Curtis Hopkins taught the man who taught Myrtle. When Myrtle was dying, really, of tuberculosis, and she went in Kansas City to hear a guest speaker who was from Emma Curtis Hopkins School of Metaphysics in Chicago. And it made such a difference. I mean, it took, like Quimby, it took years for the healing to fully manifest. But she instantly knew. She had that great unity awakening. I'm a whole and perfect child of God. I do not inherit sickness. She'd been told all her life that she was tubercular by nature and she would probably die of the disease. And so she set out to make that true.
Wow.
And so she had that awakening. And then they went to Chicago to study with Emma Curtis Hopkins. And the whole blossoming began from there, yeah.
So did Emma Curtis Hopkins study directly with Quimby, or just as she came into Mary Baker Eddy's?
As far as I know, just as she came into Mary Baker Eddy's. But, you can have the same teaching and experience it in very different ways. For Mary Baker Eddy, it was a very personal thing, and I'm not dissing Mary Baker Eddy. She, Christian Science did a tremendous amount of work, has done. But Emma Curtis Hopkins heard it differently, and the two could not work together compatibly. So she went on her own way.
Unlike today's daily word, harmony.
Unlike today's daily word, yeah. Well, we don't always practice everything we know to be true. Do it. It'd be an interesting world if we did. Okay, well, many blessings and thank you, and we'll continue our discussion as time goes on and people turn up and new possibilities emerge. But you're just at the beginning of an exciting new time in your life. I celebrate that with you.
Thank you for letting us ask questions.
We're really gonna miss you.
Oh, well, I'm going to miss you guys too.
We love you, Ed.
In the future.
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you. I love you too. Okay.
Thank you.